All right, so you mentioned this, and it's actually pretty funny. The apparently the Giants thought it was going to cost them a lot more to get Brian Burns in a trade from the Carolina Panthers. That was revealed. And is this like this preview of Hard Knocks? Are they still trying to do this? Like this is like some reality show situation. There was cameras. And apparently they thought they were going to have to pay a little bit more to get Brian Burns than they actually got from the Carolina Panthers. So the moral of the story is, if you want to get a really good player from the Carolina Panthers, don't worry. They'll accommodate you, and they'll give it to you at a rock-bottom price. Because I had forgotten completely about this until I saw an article that was written up on it yesterday, that they actually were trying, that the LA Rams were trying to get Brian Burns a few years back, and the Rams offered a first-round pick in 2024, a first-round pick in 2025, and a second-round pick in 2025. And the Panthers said, no, he's untradeable. We'd like to keep him. Only to, less than 2 years later, give him up for the Giants, give him up to the Giants for what they gave him up for. Like, it's just another example of the Carolina Panthers being the worst situation in the NFL. And I don't know if you're a Panthers fan, how you deal with knowing all the talent you've given up at rock-bottom prices. It's very bizarre.
From the clip that we saw, which I will admit this, I mean, I wasn't sure what to make of who's actually doing it. Is it Netflix? Is it or HBO? Who's doing the offseason?
I believe it's HBO.
Okay, so at HBO, I believe that's correct. Wasn't sure what to make of what it was going to be, but it does take you behind the scenes of what goes on, these conversations, and it does present a potential angle to make one organization look good, one look bad, because I mean, look, the Giants thought they were going to get Brian Burns for 2 second-round picks. Ended up being a second and a fifth. So for that price, you're going, heck yeah, man. Like, the Giants won that. And then from the outside, that's all we know. You know, we don't know what it's worth. I mean, a lot of people look back on, remember the Antonio Brown trade where the Raiders, got Antonio Brown for, I want to say it was like a second and a fifth as well, something like that.
Yeah.
And then come to find out he's never going to play it down for the Raiders because he, burned his feet in a cryo chamber, and then the helmet wouldn't fit right or whatever went on between him and John Gruden. And then the video comes out, the rap video of him and John Gruden. It's like the whole thing was such a disaster. You go, yeah, actually, I think the second and the fifth for Pittsburgh was a pretty good deal.
Was that the last great Hard Knocks, the Antonio Brown meltdown in the
I mean, probably. Which, again, had nothing to do.
No.
Like, that's when you started to see the beginning of the end for Hard Knocks. It had nothing to do with training camp. It had to do with a guy who was not in training camp. And he wasn't there for the most ridiculous reasons you could ever imagine, which made it even more entertaining. Like, this is real life. There was times when I remember hearing stories about the conduct in the NFL, how players are, how people are. And it's hard to believe when you see these shows, you're like, oh, this is like dramatized, right? Like, this is not actually like this. No, there are things where they're actually like this. Like, there is the craziest stuff you could ever imagine going on at times. And it is put into a TV film, or art film, and you get to see it. And that was one of those examples. But back to the Giants, they get Brian Burns, another piece for their defense. It doesn't cost them as much as they think. And to your earlier point, it once again takes a crap on David Tepper's Carolina Panthers and their organization, which is unfortunate because, you'd wish you could kind of build them up more and feel like they've got a shot. But of any of the teams this year going into the year, and maybe it was just how their offense looked last year, or they're in a constant state of disarray, it feels like, with their owner walking into various restaurants to, confront people about their hats and signs outside. It's like, I don't know where this team is going to go this year, but even just the offseason, when no one's playing games, you don't feel good about the Carolina Panthers and their direction moving forward.
So I look at it and I also think, this clearly, so Scott Fitterer was the GM when he passed up on, the trade that could have gotten, the 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick from the Rams. And then he was clearly the GM for the DJ Moore trade. I believe Christian McCaffrey happened before he got there, but it might have taken place while he was there as well, too. But I guess my point is, so when you see all of these moves take place, he's the one who you would look at and go, well, what's the GM doing? But this feels like David Tepper's got his fingerprints all over this, because I can't imagine that Scott Fitterer wanted to reject, 2 first-round picks and also reject a second-round pick in return for Brian Burns. Did he really want to also add DJ Moore in the trade to move up that ultimately resulted in them taking Bryce Young? Did he really want to get rid of, Christian McCaffrey? Like, it just feels like there are moves that are made that I don't know that everybody in the organization is all in on, except for maybe the owner. Like, I'd be willing to bet Scott Fitterer probably didn't want to get rid of Frank Reich. Probably didn't want to get rid of him in season and realized, man, if we do this again, this is going to set us back even further. Why go down this road? And yet it was David Tepper who got involved.
Isn't that why they are where they are with Dave Canales being there? I mean, supposedly it wasn't Bryce Young who maybe the coaching staff wanted. It was David Tepper who wanted him, right? Which now makes a lot of sense in retrospect, looking at how Josh McCown had handled the CJ Stroud workout. Remember the video that came out? You could hear the audio of Josh McCown talking about playing against him, all stuff, maybe in basketball or something.
Yeah.
Now it leads you to think, okay, wait a second, maybe that was where the coaching staff was,
and there was also
how they felt about it.
There was also the story that I think we all kind of had a little bit of fun with it, but there was Frank Reich, and he didn't want to coach small quarterbacks or something like that. It was like he'd never had a quarterback that was under a certain height or whatnot. Like you start to look back at all that and you go, oh man, like David Tepper really did overrule everything here. Like they're screwed.
Which, I'll be the first to admit, I was really high on Bryce Young. Despite his size, despite all of that, watching from college and what he did and how he kind of elevated even Alabama, which at a time, a lot of people are like, how do you elevate Alabama? They didn't win a national championship. It's like, well, they were actually devoid of a lot of things that some of the opponents had. LSU's had a better run of wide receivers than Alabama, at least of late. And if you want to challenge that, go ahead. But look what they've done between Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors, who's drafted in the first round. They'll continue to have some of those guys as well. There's been other high draft picks as well. And it's not a knock on Alabama. It's just that's been the run of late. And when you're looking at like what Bryce Young did at college, he kind of elevated the play of everyone around him. And so I thought, okay, like right system, right circumstance. And Frank Reich, who's a former quarterback, and all those things kind of connected you to, like, he's going to have a great opportunity. I didn't even know if it would start right away. I really thought it'd be Andy Dalton. And looking back on last season, it probably should have been Dalton for a longer portion of the year so they could allow Bryce to feel more comfortable with that. And then when you saw the one game Andy Dalton played, I think he threw for like the most yards of any quarterback that year. It's tough, man. I mean, you hate to beat a dead horse in the Carolina Panthers and how they are viewed, but what's come out so far in this offseason little docuseries isn't helping their case.
Yeah, it's a bad look.